Welcome to our deep dive. This time, it's all about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We're going deep into the Christian teachings and perspectives on this pretty monumental event.
Yeah, it's a story that's, well, full of twists and turns, not exactly a straightforward thing.
Not at all. And from what you shared, it seems like the sources really dig into those twists and turns, especially those differing reactions to the empty tomb.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, seriously, put yourself in their shoes for a second. We're talking about Mary Magdalene, Joanna, the mother of James, and, well, as one of the sources puts it, some other women.
Right.
They head to the tomb early Sunday morning. They're expecting to anoint Jesus' body. Standard procedure, right?
Yeah.
But then, bam, the stone's rolled away. Tomb's empty.
It's at this point that those details you flagged about Jewish burial customs become so crucial.
Oh, yeah, totally. Those details really paint a picture.
For sure. So they wrapped bodies in linen, right, with spices and such. And that mixture, it basically hardened almost like a plaster cast. It wasn't just a simple unwrapping job,
It's a detail that makes you really stop and think, like,
Yeah.
whoa, something really major must have happened here.
No doubt about it.
It's almost like a scene from a mystery novel, But instead of a detective, you have two men in shining white clothes just, poof, appearing before these women.
It's, most interpretations point to them being angels, right?
Right. And they deliver this message that just cuts right through the women's grief. They say, why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Powerful stuff.
And you know what's interesting? They specifically remind the women of something Jesus himself had said about his death and resurrection. It's like, were they forgetting? Or maybe just, I don't know, not fully grasping it until that moment.
It's almost like they needed that reminder to fully process what was happening. But even with that, not everyone was so quick to believe.
Oh, absolutely. Your sources mention how the apostles initially dismissed the women's account as an idle tale.
Idle tale. That's a pretty dismissive way to put it. Makes you think about how powerful preconceived notions can be, even when you're faced with, like, firsthand testimony.
For sure. And even Peter, the guy known for his impulsiveness, he was skeptical too at first.
But the source material says he still ran to the tomb to see for himself.
Yeah. Seems like even the biggest skeptic can be swayed by tangible evidence.
Absolutely. And what does he find? The empty tomb, the linen wrappings, exactly as the women described.
It's like, boom, here's the proof. And this is just the beginning, the first in a whole series of increasingly compelling encounters with, well, the resurrected Jesus.
Encounters that, as you mentioned, really challenge our understanding of not only history, but the very nature of life and death.
Exactly.
And then we have Mary Magdalene, still grieving, understandably so, and she mistakes Jesus for a gardener.
It's not until he speaks her name that she recognizes him.
Such a deeply emotional moment.
Yeah.
It really makes you pause and think about why Jesus chose to appear to Mary first.
Yeah. Some scholars suggest it was a testament to her faithfulness,
Others point to, you highlighted this in your notes, the possibility that it was meant to elevate the role of women as witnesses.
Right, especially in a society that often dismissed their testimony.
It's a detail that really adds another layer to the story, wouldn't you say?
For sure. And, the encounters don't stop there. You were also really intrigued by the story of the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. That one's, it's one of the most captivating narratives in all the resurrection accounts.
Absolutely. It's so vivid, so full of emotion. You have these two disciples walking along, talking, just trying to wrap their heads around everything that's happened.
Yeah, they're grappling with grief, confusion, just a whole whirlwind of emotions. And then they're joined by this stranger who, unbeknownst to them, is actually Jesus in disguise.
It's brilliant storytelling, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And what's so interesting is that Jesus, he doesn't immediately reveal himself. He plays it cool. He prompts them, pushes them to actually articulate their doubts and fears.
He asks them, what are you discussing as you walk along? It's like he's inviting them, and us as the readers, to really confront our own uncertainties.
And to engage on a much deeper level.
Totally. It's like he's guiding them and us on this journey of intellectual and spiritual discovery.
A journey that, it leads to something pretty remarkable.
And that's where we'll pick up next time on our deep dive into the resurrection of Jesus Christ. See you then.
See you. A journey that culminates in, the breaking of bread.
Such a simple act, right? But in Jewish tradition, it's so much more.
Oh, absolutely. And it's during this shared meal that recognition dawns on them, the disciples, I mean.
It's such a powerful moment. And then, poof, he vanishes.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how revelation can come in the most unexpected ways.
Totally. Sometimes through the simplest, most everyday things.
You also highlighted how these encounters with the resurrected Jesus, they really emphasize the physicality of it all.
Oh, yeah. That was a point you made in your notes that I thought was really interesting.
He's not a ghost, you know. He eats, he can be touched. He even bears the marks of his crucifixion.
It's a far cry from the prevailing beliefs about the afterlife that we see in
Yeah.
the source material. Like, it really challenges those traditional viewpoints.
Exactly. You mentioned 3 common beliefs about what happens after death. No life after death, reincarnation, and the soul continuing on in some kind of spirit realm.
Right. So let's break those down. How does the resurrection fit or not fit with those?
Well, the belief that there's simply no life after death, it's directly contradicted by the resurrection accounts. Jesus doesn't just cease to exist. He comes back to life.
In a transformed way, but still physical.
Right, right. And then there's reincarnation, the idea that the soul is reborn into a new body. That doesn't really fit the narrative either.
No, because Jesus doesn't come back as a different person or being.
Right.
Right. He retains his identity.
Even his wounds. And as for the belief that the soul continues in a spirit realm,
Yeah. What about that one?
well, while the resurrection definitely points to some form of continued existence beyond death, it's not quite the same as that traditional idea of a purely spiritual afterlife.
Because Jesus' resurrected body, it's physical, it's tangible. He interacts with the world around him.
It's a new kind of existence, one that, defies easy categorization, you know?
It's no wonder this event completely shook things up for those who witnessed it.
Yeah, they were basically having to rethink everything they thought they knew.
And it continues to challenge us today. Every detail of this story seems to be layered with meaning.
Like those Old Testament parallels you were so interested in.
Oh, yeah. You pointed out how Jesus might have used those Old Testament events and teachings to help explain his suffering and glorification to the disciples on the road to Emmaus.
Right. The source material offers some really intriguing examples. The bronze serpent, the tabernacle sacrifices, Psalm 22, Isaiah 53.
It's almost like these echoes from the past suddenly become so relevant in light of the resurrection.
Like pieces of a puzzle falling into place.
Exactly. Take that bronze serpent, for instance. In the book of Numbers, the Israelites are dying from venomous snake bites. God tells Moses to make a bronze serpent and lift it up on a pole. Anyone who looks at it, they're healed.
And your source material suggests that just as they had to look at the bronze serpent to be saved, we have to look to Jesus lifted up on the cross for our salvation.
That's such a powerful connection. Healing and sacrifice.
And it really highlights how the Old Testament kind of foreshadows these events in the New Testament.
It makes you want to go back and reread those passages with a fresh perspective,
See them in a new light.
Exactly. And speaking of seeing things in a new light, the source material also presents this compelling argument. When you're confronted with the evidence of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, you're forced to make a choice.
Lunatic, liar, or Lord.
Those are the options. It really pushes you to consider the implications of his claims, especially that claim of being one with God.
It's a question that goes beyond historical debate. It gets personal.
It really does. We've talked about how the disciples' doubt was transformed into unshakable faith after seeing the risen Jesus. But how did that transformation actually happen? What was it about those encounters that had such a profound impact?
It really is incredible to think about. I mean, they went from hiding in fear to boldly proclaiming the resurrection, even when it meant putting themselves in danger. How do you go through a shift like that?
Well, the sources you shared really emphasized that it wasn't just about seeing Jesus. It was more about the nature of those encounters. Like he ate with them, he showed them his wounds. There's even that part where he invites Thomas to touch his scars. Imagine that, being invited to actually touch the marks of the crucifixion. It just drives home the point that this wasn't some ghostly apparition. Jesus was making it very clear that his resurrected body was physical, it was tangible, it was real. So it really challenged their whole understanding of what resurrection meant. It wasn't just going back to the same old earthly existence. This was something completely new, something they couldn't have even grasped before.
Exactly. And it was in that realization, in that shift, that their fear turned into awe. Their doubt became this unshakable faith. It was like they finally understood the magnitude of what Jesus was claiming. He really was the Messiah, the Son of God, just as he had said.
Like all the pieces finally clicked into place. The teachings, the miracles, the sacrifice, and then ultimately the victory over death. It wasn't just about following a wise teacher anymore. They were witnesses to something that defied everything they thought they knew.
And with that realization, there came this incredible sense of purpose. They were now tasked with spreading this news that death had been conquered, forgiveness was possible, that a new era had begun. It explains how they went from being terrified and hiding behind locked doors to becoming these courageous proclaimers, willing to face anything for this truth.
It really makes you think about the power of belief, how it can completely transform someone. But you also pointed out in your notes that not everyone accepts the resurrection as fact. There are skeptics, and understandably so.
Yeah.
There are alternative explanations, objections that need to be addressed. What if we shift gears for a bit, put on our skeptic hats?
Sounds good to me.
One of the common objections that you highlighted is that maybe the disciples hallucinated or just made up the whole story. Grief, trauma, wishful thinking, those are powerful forces, and they could definitely lead people to believe what they want to believe, even if it's not real.
Right, it's a valid point. But one of the counterarguments that comes up in your sources is the sheer number of witnesses. It wasn't just one or two people having a vision. The accounts talk about Jesus appearing to individuals, to small groups, and even to a crowd of over 500 people. Well, statistically speaking, it's pretty improbable that many people would all experience the same elaborate hallucination.
It makes you think about group delusion. But the scale and consistency of the resurrection accounts, they seem different. But what about the idea that the disciples just made it all up to gain power or influence?
It's a theory, but it's hard to reconcile with the persecution they faced. I mean, would they really endure beatings, imprisonment, even death for a lie they fabricated?
Doesn't seem very likely. It wasn't just a story to them. They were living it, even when it cost them everything. Are there other alternative explanations for the empty tomb and the appearances?
There's the swoon theory, the idea that Jesus didn't actually die on the cross, that he just fainted or went into a coma. And then the cool air in the tomb revived him, and he appeared to his followers later on. It's basically an attempt to explain things away without any supernatural elements.
But wouldn't those Roman soldiers, I mean, they were trained executioners, right? They would have known if someone was still alive.
Exactly. Roman crucifixion was brutal, and it was effective. Plus, you highlighted a specific detail from the sources. The spear piercing Jesus' side, that was meant to confirm death. And even if he had somehow survived the crucifixion itself, that would have been fatal.
So even when you consider all the different objections and alternative explanations, that evidence for a physical resurrection, it still seems pretty strong. But it does require a leap of faith, doesn't it? It pushes us to look beyond what we think we understand and to consider the possibility that there's something more, something beyond our current scientific framework.
You've hit the nail on the head. What's so fascinating about all of this, and what I think you were hoping to get out of those sources, is that the resurrection of Jesus isn't just some historical event to debate. It's an invitation to a life-changing encounter with the divine. It asks you, what if it's true?
And that's the question we leave you with today. If this event really did happen, with all its implications, how might it change your understanding of the world, of your own life, of your place in all of it? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.